if you look at where we are right now, our internal approvals are now done via e-signature. Most of our contracts are done now again via e-signature. Suppliers can send their invoices via PDF. And so this digital transformation that we were going through, let me be very clear that we were going through a digital transformation even 1 year ago, but it was going at a very slow pace. And suddenly, because of this crisis of historic proportions, it suddenly exploded and we found ourselves transformed. And when you fast forward to where we are today, I mean, we've emerged out of this crisis relatively unscathed. I mean, the crisis is still going on, of course, but compared to where we were when we started, we have emerged and we have ensured business continuity. So this will be our topic, our very exciting topic for today and for the next 20, 30 minutes. Okay, so it's about digitalization in procurement. So we spoke about where we were and the slow transformation that we had, but even if you look away from that to the overall setup or the overall context of what FMCG companies are facing, they're dealing with dynamic consumer preferences. What does it mean? Consumer needs are changing rapidly if you are in an FMCG or a related industry. So companies often have to be very responsive in order to remain relevant to the consumer, right? So think about that context and also think about how technology has rapidly advanced. So technologies that were emerging 1 or 2 years ago have now almost reached obsolescence and new technologies are emerging. Just take that into consideration as well. Now on top of it, we are supply chain professionals, right? So think about how the supply chain role itself has evolved over the last 3-4 years. There's a very common saying that, and I'm sure some of you have heard about it, it's that, it's no longer about one company competing with another company in order to win at a marketplace. It's about a supply chain versus a supply chain. It's about how one company manages its upstream supplier to their manufacturing arm, to their distribution and retail and consumer arm, versus another company managing the same level. It has come to that. And so what we also articulate very well in ISEA and in the CSCM program is it's about who manages the overall profitability of not just the individual company, but the entire supply chain that ultimately wins. So just think about that also, about how the supply chain role itself is evolving. And now let's zoom in on procurement, which is an integral part of supply chain and is in fact one of the core drivers of supply chain performance, as we say in CSCM. So where was procurement, let's say 5 years ago, and where is procurement today? We used to be taking quotes, let's say, from suppliers. That was all what procurement was. And if you look at where we are today, 5 years has changed the function a lot. So today it's not just about how we buy in terms of taking quotations or whatever, it's all about what we buy. Can we buy something else in order to add value to the consumer? It's about being very close to your company's business objectives and how procurement can support it. So procurement has evolved from just a simple transactional function to being a strategic advisor to the business. And in order to do that, end-to-end excellence or efficiencies in our end-to-end processes is key. So what does all of this mean? It means if we are to be a responsive supply chain, and we talk about this a lot, we need to make sure that our back-end processes, our supporting functions are supporting that. And so this is the context at which we have to look at digitalization. It's not a fancy term anymore. Let us be very clear about that. And then let's consider about what has been happening is a classic example with what we are seeing in the pandemic. We will be encountering more of paradigm changing events such as the one that we are just going through. So how are we going to come out of it alive with our processes and with our processes improved and our business continuity ensured? So this is the context at which we have to look at digitalization in procurement. So what I will do is I will take you through some digital tools that we have. But before that, let me tell you what what we generally conceptualize as procurement, and as the end-to-end value chain that makes procurement. So, and again, we use different terms in this. Okay, we say sourcing, we say purchasing, we say procurement. I'm not going to spend too much time about talking about the differences. It's how we perceive as well in our respective companies. So for us, when we talk about procurement, if you look at the top left, it starts with you, procurement professional, defining a category sourcing strategy for your respective spend categories, be it raw material categories, packaging, indirect materials, services, and so on. You need to have a strategy of how you want to buy for the next, let's say, 3 years, driven by your internal business requirements and the supply landscape, and you need to bridge it through this strategy. When you have a strategy devised and approved, then you go ahead to do your supply selection, applying the criteria that you need to apply. Then you do your day-to-day or routine contracting. Then you come to the more transactional part of procurement. You can call it purchasing or procure to pay, where your internal stakeholders, based on the contracts that you have established, order what you want. Yeah, and then it comes to what we call the GR, or the goods receipt, and finally you do one of the most important things to your supply, which is to pay them. Right, so this is what we mean by the procurement end-to-end value chain. So what sort of digital tools have I seen and have been used in where I have been working? So these are some examples of what these are, and you can see that we have a lot of digital tools throughout this end-to-end. And so it's very exciting for us to see these tools, and very exciting to actually apply these tools. So if I summarize, so I have 8 tools to take you through today about what I have experienced in these tools. I mean, these are great tools, and I still feel that as procurement professionals, we are not using them to the fullest extent, right? So let me start with Ariba Event Management. So if your company has an ERP system to manage your operations, you have SAP, right? And so SAP Ariba is a partnership that is there, and then there's the Ariba package that companies have, that we have as well. So if you have this, you can do Ariba RFQs online. So it's an online platform to obtain quotations from suppliers. Ariba RFP, RFI, you call it RFI, RFP, and RFQ. So it stands for getting different supply proposals, whether it's an entire proposal or a price. But the point is, you can use this great tool to really do your bidding online, and without the hassle of emails or papers or calls, because we used to get even quotations through post. So just think about the amount of paperwork that keeps on stacking up at a procurement professional's desk, because we have to maintain those quotations. So all of that goes away if you really use this tool to its fullest effect. And there are basic features that we can really use and that are really exciting. One of them is the reminder feature. So it sets up, you can set up a frequency of that event when you set up the event in the online portal, to set auto reminders to suppliers instead of manual follow-up that says, okay, you have 1 day to submit your bid, you have 2 days to submit your offer, and so on. You also have a timestamp of all the activities, and there's an online repository as well. So for those of us in supply chain, and I will talk about this later also, compliance is key, right? So compliance also means a lot of paperwork. So with all of this, with the timestamp and all of that can be still preserved and maintained, but at less hassle. So this is the basic feature that you can use, that I have used to great effect. But there's also what I call level up feature, which is you can use your gate questions here. So let me tell you some interesting thing that happened maybe 7-8 months ago. So we used to get quotations for a certain manufacturing spend category, and when we started using this, so what this does is, if I look at the gate questions, what happens is you can use the gate questions as a feature to persuade suppliers to confirm other essential terms that you usually do in a negotiation. So it's not just about pricing. You have to make sure your suppliers acceptance to certain your policies, your payment terms. You have to also confirm their financial status, any food or quality status application that you need to get according to your company policy. They have to sign off all of this. So you have to do a lot lot of things. So in this particular scenario, it required a lot of persuasion to call this guy online and tell them, look, you have to have this document prepared, you have to do this financial stability analysis and all of it. But then when we submitted in Ariba, which is what we did last time, when we submitted in Ariba, how it is set up is these are gate questions, meaning it's a prerequisite for them to submit their offer. So here you have a position where for you to do a business, you need to submit your quotation for you to get the business and be competitive. But then those terms that would have been later have to be used by the buyer are prerequisites for them to submit it. So that changes the process dramatically. And so after we went live with this, we had those data submitted by them without even asking too much details, because they realized that in order to submit that these were prerequisites. So it changes the way suppliers do it. It changes your time, changes the way you get it also. Okay, so the gate questions feature is a really great tool that you can use in the basic feature. Now, the next one is a really exciting one. Is to level up how you do competitive bidding with e-auctions again in Ariba. So, this is a great tool if you have a high value or a high volume spend, where you also have multiple potential suppliers who would usually bid for it, right? So what you do here is you set up this event in Ariba. It's a real-time dynamic event where they have to log into a certain time slot and then submit their bid. So you could define the system, you could set up configure your system in a way that matches your own strategy, which is, you can design it in such a way that they can see who is the most competitive offer. They won't know who it is, you can set it up in that way, but they will see what the leading price is, and they will see what their own rank is. So that sort of prompts the supplier to be very competitive, right? So what you are seeing on the right hand is actually the outcome of a real event that we had last year for a services category, where you can see if the chart is clear, within a span of about 12 minutes, the offer that they started at the start, they said in the preparation that there is really no room for them to come down further, but then in 12 minutes, he had almost 6 to 10% cost reduction achieved. So, really again, here what happens is the supplier is prompted to bid below target price with their rank and lead bid shown. Seeing that rank and bid really helps to to motivate them. So again, you can set up the gate question feature to realign contract terms and negotiation. So what does all of this do? It cuts down your negotiation time. It cuts down your agreement setup time because you can set up all these as gate questions and they are online. They have a digital timestamp, signature, and traceability. So, and then you achieve cost reduction also. So it overall unlocks more value to a procurement professional than doing it in the traditional way, if you can call it that. And again, so now we come again to compliance, which is the next tool that I wanted to talk about. Now, as I said before, what does compliance mean? Compliance is very important to supply chain and procurement, right? So while it's important, what it meant before or without digitalization is you have to maintain files upon files upon files of data or documents in order for us to make sure that we are compliant. We have like tracking of codes, of agreements, and all of it. But you don't need to do any of that if you're using Ariba CM tool or the contract management tool. So this is an online repository for legal agreements. So once you have a legal agreement done, you don't need to keep a copy of it in your files as a procurement person. You can upload it into the Ariba CM feature. You also have what they call a sourcing strategy repository. So I spoke about sourcing strategies before and why we need it. So I remember when we were those days, we used to have this document of our strategy, and it was signed by, let's say, the head of procurement or the head of supply chain, and then we used to file it, right? But with this feature, now all you need to do is once you devise your strategy document, just upload it into Ariba. There's an automatic workflow that is triggered to the head of the spend or the head of procurement. When he or she approves it, it goes into this repository as well. So you have timestamp and you have traceability. So that what more can you get from get in order to do your compliance requirements? So we are not maintaining any files anymore. You simply have all the the documents, sorry, the Ariba links in your in a chart, and if an internal auditor or an external auditor wants to have a look, just give them the links and you let them enjoy going through it when they have a requirement, right? So that is where we are. So again, when it comes to ensuring compliance and contract repository, what I consider as a level up for us to use, companies to use is one example is e-signature. So I spoke about e-signature before, and one tool that I can definitely recommend is DocuSign. So you see how it looks in the bottom right if you are not familiar with it. So DocuSign is a portal that you can use for e-signatures of documents, even legal contracts with internal or external parties. I mean, I wouldn't go into details of how DocuSign is used, but you can set it up in such a way that you set up your emails, and so a workflow can be triggered for this. Very exciting tool and a great tool to use. And then we have you can do a communication portal when you talk about digitalizing the function. So the Ariba portal is again a direct, simple communication feature which you can do with a supplier during an Ariba event. Platform it can utilize as a round of negotiation, as well post Ariba event to further confirm your proposition. So you save time, you save emails, and lots of other things that you would have usually done via, let's say, none or less digitalized forms. But this also, you have more now in procurement to really digitalize our journey. So now we have what we call, certain companies have what we call a supplier portal, which goes beyond just communication, where the supplier can upload all commercial, even technical documents and other supplier details, POs, invoice, they can follow up on their payment status. So think about the amount of manual work, amount of paperwork, amount of time that you can save through this for both you and to your supplier, overall creating a lot of value for the entire supply chain and thereby increasing what we call supply chain value creation and profitability. Yeah. So if I look at the next one, yeah, one of my all-time favorites. So you have what we call e-catalogs, right? So you can really upscale your indirect sourcing categories, in my opinion, in my experience, because for those of you who have been dealing with, let's say, indirect spend categories, services like, and also indirect materials like promotional items, or these sorts of things where your internal stakeholders in marketing, sales have very ad hoc needs. Procurement professionals who are working in those categories also tend to be very spontaneous and dynamic because of that. That is not a bad thing, but that leads procurement the maturity to be very unstructured, I would say, in that. So one way you can really get rid of all of that and make life very easy for you is you can go with an e-catalog. So what is an e-catalog? So it's more like Daraz or eBay, where you have prices that are pre-negotiated, and a user can just go and click what they want, right? So here, now these tools are business to consumer, consumer to consumer, but think about extrapolating that concept into a business to business solution. That is what we mean by an e-catalog. One e-catalog portal, for example, that companies use, that we've used, is called EasyBuy again. And so the concept is prices are pre-negotiated by procurement, uploaded into an online catalog, and so your user departments can just browse through the shopping cart concept and select a required item. So that creates what we call PR, a purchase requisition, and then automatically convert it into a purchase order. You can do more. So again, here the level up is you can actually set up this PO to be sent automatically to the supplier if you have their emails and everything configured in the system. So one click, shopping cart, done, your approvals done in one go, and it goes to your supplier. So this is end-to-end digitalization in the procurement function in a very, that used to be a very let's say unstructured or unorganized spend category, such as indirect categories, and that is what we mean by upscaling. So it's about true value creation and transformation. Another favorite of mine is a digital tool that we have in the lower end of the end-to-end is what we call AutoGR solutions. So this is ideal for spends that are non-critical, low value, but where you have a high number of transactions where you need to do a lot of goods receipt or confirmation that the service has happened. So there are AutoGR tools in procurement that are now available, which you can use to, it works this way, right? So there is a basic feature, which is you have your automatic reminder sent to the requester who raises what we call the PR, purchase requisition. And if there's no positive intervention, the goods receipt will happen after a deadline expires. So there, the logic is intervention only by exception. So unless the user tells the system, I don't want this to goods receipt, yes, for whatever reason, it will go ahead and do the goods receipt anyway, right? So it's a single portal to view all goods receipts pending and to be coming. So it's like what I call an online bank account, where you can view all the goods receipts that you have to do and what you have completed. So once again, just think of the amount of effort, the amount of time that we save by digitalizing, going the digitalization journey in the part of goods receipt. And one final thing that our suppliers will love if you communicate it in the right way is paperless invoicing. So paperless invoicing tools are now available that allow suppliers to upload their invoices without manually submitting, right, to various contact points in the company. And that actually leads to a lot of confusion as well, back and forth, rework, manual paperwork and all. So one great thing that it does, this paperless solutions does, is it eliminates the need to maintain invoice reception. Now, when you have a timestamp or a digital signature of an invoice being uploaded, it avoids payment delays because the invoices are in effect being received by the company. And so you get rid of all those painful discussions that you have to have with your, as procurement professionals, that with your suppliers when you do a negotiation saying, oh, my payments are not here. So just think about the potential of these tools and the amount of value it will create. So what is the next level? So next level that is already available in the industry is what we call self-billing solutions. This is amazing. So what does it mean? It means if, for example, if you have really high frequency transactions with a supplier, a trusted supplier, that means you can actually design, these tools actually allow the company to self-bill itself without depending on suppliers for invoices. And so what this means is, of course, you'll have to look at your claims and things as well, but you don't need to depend on suppliers for invoicing. When the goods receipt happens, you will see these self-billing solutions running automatically via batch jobs and just billing itself and making the payment itself. So think about the end-to-end streamlining from where we are now to what these tools can do. Okay, so and the last bit that I wanted to say in this is, now we've been talking about digital tools here and there covering the end-to-end value chain. Now, as procurement professionals, as supply chain professionals, we have to report, right? We have to do reporting of our KPIs, and so where the most companies, or even the company that I work for, Nestle, we have what we call supplier service level, which is a measure of our suppliers' capabilities, raw and packaging material supply capability in terms of delivering on time, at the right quantity and at the right quality. So almost, I would say, up to 2 years ago, we used to log into SAP, our ERP solution, download a report, and then do more, then do, let's say, number crunching to analyze the data. And then, so this takes, if you have done it, you know how long it takes for you to download and then how long it takes for you to process it. And then 2 years ago, we started using what we call Power BI. So this solution is linked, if you can design it to be linked with SAP at the back end, it does, not only does it do the data extraction, but it also do the data crunching for you. So what you're essentially doing is, if you have a Power BI dashboard, you're zooming in and out of your end-to-end. If you use the right filters and all, and it will show you who the top contributors are in terms of service level, who is doing well, who is not doing so well, that you might need to reach out and have a conversation with your supplier. So, and the great thing is, you don't need to crunch data based on your manual reporting. So all of this is ready-made, and you can just do your contributor analysis by looking at the dashboard. And so you can then focus on where it matters most, which is where you have to implement and talk to your suppliers and implement corrective actions. So this is kind of what I wanted to talk to you all today in terms of different digital solutions that are available. But I also want to take some time to just think about, just have a share my thoughts on key things that you have to watch out for and key enablers towards this towards a digitalized procurement journey. So I look at this in two sections. One is the internal change management mindset that is required, and on the other hand, the supply agreement. So if you talk about the change management that is required, it's a mindset change basically that you need your team to be in supply chain and procurement. You need to transform from a transactional function to a strategic function. That is what this gives you, right? So it allows you to spend more time in doing value adding and strategic activities, building supply relationships, learning more about the spend category that you are managing in procurement, in supply chain. Yeah. And also, when you think about how you started this, right? When I think about how we started this, we didn't focus on the 100%. We were pragmatic. We went for 80% because you cannot achieve digitalization by looking at the full scope, right? So don't focus on the 100% at the start, at least. So you manage the most important areas, your Pareto analysis, what it gives you as the highest value contributors, and then you work out the rest. And another very important thing is you have to maintain sustainability in the process. For an example, when you are doing an e-auction, now I gave you one example that I had where pricing really became competitive. So as a buyer, as a procurement professional, you need to understand that sometimes you need to make sure that your suppliers are not undercutting or not going out of their way, because it's not sustainable for them. And remember, battles are against supply chains and supply chains. So when suppliers lose, the entire supply chain suffers as well. So it's not healthy for your the ecosystem that you have when a supplier is undercutting, although you as a company will benefit from it. So it's very important that when you go on using these e-tools, that you maintain that sustainability in the process. And also, you will fail when you go towards the digitalization, go on the digitalization journey. So my request there is fail, but fail fast, so that you can recover, right? And when you talk about the other side, be very transparent with your suppliers on the process, especially Ariba and e-auction. Show them the benefits of it. One thing you have to do is to onboard them. Now, when for example, we did an e-auction about 3 months ago, where for that particular group of suppliers it was new, and we actually had 2 trial sessions with them to make sure that they understand what needs to be done. And so you need to onboard them. That is when they also start enjoying the tool. Yeah. And another point is we need to set clear prerequisites in e-sourcing, which we touched upon, so I won't go into details. And one of the most important things is you need to show how win-win it is for a supplier, the proposition. Now, if you think about what e-auctions does, right? So I'm coming back to e-auctions here, because it actually allows them to show their standing against their competition. So it allows them to benchmark. So how important, how valuable is it in terms of business intelligence, right? So that is what we need to keep in mind. So that is what I had for you today. But I just want to close by saying one thing. So we spoke about 8 e-tools, but where are we really heading? Where are we really heading? So, they say necessity is the mother of invention. And so when I think about the e-auction tools that we've used, for example, e-auctions or Ariba events, I always think, okay, so now we have this done. So how great, how fantastic would it be if I can convert this into a contract directly from that? When you are using your e-catalogs, you think, how great would it be? So I already have the PO sent to the supplier, but how great if this solution also allowed me to go next to GR, goods receipt in the own portal. And then if that own portal allowed the supplier to upload an invoice and pay them. So this is where we are heading. This is where we are heading. End-to-end integration, one e-tool, and we join up the flow. So this is where the thinking is heading. This is where we will be in the next year. Most companies that can conceptualize, that are conceptualizing this, and anyway, this is where the industry is heading. So this is why this journey is evolving, and it's evolving fast. So thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions from you if you have it. Over to you, Shu.
Okay, Well. So did you enjoy it? I simply enjoyed it. I loved it. So if you enjoyed what he has shared just now, what Rajit has shared, just type in "oh yeah" on your chat box. Go ahead. If you enjoyed and learned few other areas. And I was very much taken away with the way you know the tools, the description you have given. My God, this is brilliant. So I have a question, right? Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Now, digitization, it looks like it's inevitable, it's going to happen, it's already here, right? So how do you take care of the mental shift at that point? Like at this point, because it's there are so many changes that are happening, right? So there are different categories or different ages of people we are working within a team. So the mental shift, how do you say that? How can we take care of the team in a way that they don't get scared, but they adapt to it?
Yeah. So no, that's actually a great question, Shu, and thank you for that. In what we've seen, you should not force digitalization. It needs to come out naturally. You start with your, let's say, as procurement and supply chain professionals, you have to take a good, hard, long look at what your supply chain strategy kind of is, and it should be fitted very well into the business strategy, what the company needs to achieve. And whenever you think about a responsive business, that needs to have a responsive supply chain. And in order to have a responsive supply chain, you need to have a very strong back-end process. So that the team needs to go through that thinking for them to understand that this is something that needs to be had. And then that's the first start. That's the starting point, I would say. And then you need to see the results. Yeah, sure. You need to see the results, show the results of it. You have to start slowly taking, let's say, the easily manageable categories on this journey. You need to show very carefully, like the picture of success. If you talk about how e-auctions enable you to unlock savings and unlock value, when you see one taking place and you motivate your team to do more of it, this is what we have tried out, and so far it has worked. You just need to tell them how to use the tools.
Right.
And when they do the tools, they say, "Wow, this is amazing."
Okay, great. So is your workplace more exciting right now?
Yeah. Of course.
Okay.
Absolutely. So your question was on how AI would evolve and all.
Yes.
So what I was saying was, of course, AI will take a good part of your scope, right? But the whole idea, if I'll talk about procurement, is there will always be, as I said before, procurement will be a strategic advisor, is a strategic advisor to the business. That is how it should look. I don't think you can replace that part for sure. Mm-hmm. But definitely the transactional part, even negotiations, if you look at e-auctions will take that, right? But then you need to have relationship with your suppliers built so that they continue to add value to your supply chain. They are an integral part of the supply chain. So that part I don't see being removed, because the relationship that we have to have with our suppliers, it should not be just transactional. Transactional has to be enabled by relationship. So these sort of attributes will remain.
Right. But technology will enhance that relationship, I guess.
Enhance that relationship.
That's right. Okay, great. So you just finished your CSCM, right?
Yes.
With ISCA. How was the experience?
I think one of the best things that I have to say here is how it kind of conceptualized supply chain and the relationship, because these are very practical, real life operations, living and breathing functions. And so when you involve yourself in them, oftentimes you don't really look at how it can conceptualize it. So with ISCA, with the CSCM program, it helped us to sort of zoom out of the entire picture and see, okay, so this is what needs to happen. You need to have your company, there has to be a strategy, and then that strategy has to be aligned with supply chain. So that view really helps you to zoom out and say, okay, so this is what I have been doing all this time, but then this is what I have to improve. So that I really have to thank the CSCM program for giving me perspective. I think that's the word I was looking for, perspective.
Okay.
Perspective.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for sharing.
The most profitable companies in the world have learned to use their supply chains to keep goods and services flowing into the marketplace. But supply chain processes are only as good as the people who keep them running. Supply chain employment opportunities are constantly being created, and ISCEA certified professionals are getting the best paid jobs. If you wish to become a sound supply chain professional and gain real-world experience and knowledge, then ISCEA is your one-stop source for supply chain education, certification, and recognition. ISCEA is the International Supply Chain Education Alliance. We were the first organization certifying supply chain professionals around the globe, and we remain the worldwide authoritative resource for supply chain career validation, with thousands of certificate holders commanding top-tier salaries. Our certification programs are aligned with best practices and industry-proven standards. They bring together academic research advances and innovative industry trends, validating that you have the knowledge used by top companies to remain competitive in an ever-changing business environment. For your company, that translates into significant cost reductions, faster revenue growth, and a collaborative teamwork environment. For your career, it means exceeding everyone's expectations and taking control of your future. So, what are you waiting for? Stand out from the crowd and take your career to the next level with an ISCEA internationally recognized supply chain certification.